Hello everybody and welcome back to the Retro Horror Iceberg Part 3. And before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has seen Part 1 and Part 2. It's astonishing to me that I believe at the time of recording, I am at 107 views on Part 2 and Part 1 is almost about to be at 100 views. And it blows my mind that knowing 100 people have watched the video, and something about that just, like, I can't wrap my skull around. You know, I started doing this because I wanted to finally put the time into sitting down and doing YouTube. You know, I've tried in the past, but I'm like, I'm not happy with this, but I'm doing something that I'm happy with, and I feel like I can keep doing, and it seems like you guys are enjoying it, and I just really wanted to say thank you. It bewilders me that people are enjoying it as much as they do, so I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very, very much, seriously. In other news, the Goofing Off podcast will eventually be moved to another channel. Right now, there's not much of a point in starting a new channel when I'm still relatively new, and still, you know, getting traction and stuff like that. So for the time being, Goofing Off will stay on the main channel, and eventually it will become its own channel once there's more traffic on this channel and I can indoctrinate the audience over to another area, but we'll worry about that later on down the line. But keep an eye on that. Eventually it will be on another channel. That Goofing Off will just be completely on there, and then the normal Iceberg, horror content, true crime stuff will stay on this channel. And yeah, so I just want to make sure that was pointed out before I forgot, and then never made any mention of it again. And it's like, oh, where'd Goofing Off go? Oh, it's on the channel that I never announced, you know? It's fine. I do believe that's all in terms of updates and stuff. I have this that I still need to finish, and I have a few other videos that I still need to work on. Those will be out after the Iceberg's done. I think I'm just going to kind of full force focus on doing the Iceberg. That way it can be done, I can work on the supercut, and go from there, basically. But yeah, that's all in terms of news, so let's go ahead and get into it. But as always, thank you guys for tuning in. So starting with Tier 4, off the beaten path cult hits, experimental titles, and other semi-obscure games. These games may have a decent following, but can be hard to find in physical format or have limited info about them. And what better way to kick off Tier 4 than with a beautiful, beautiful PS1 game that I hold near and dear to my heart, LSD Dream Emulator. The Dream Emulator was a game developed for the original PlayStation and is a surreal exploration game based on the real dream journal of a game designer at Asmic Ace. With no combat, objectives, or dialogue, players walk through ever-changing dreamscapes filled with bizarre visuals and unsettling ambience. Each dream lasts about 10 minutes, after which players wake up and are scored on the dream's tone and content. The environments can shift from peaceful to nightmarish without warning, keeping the player in a constant state of unease. Though it only sold around 10,000 copies and it was Japan exclusive, it became legendary online for its abstract horror. The game is now considered an early example of aesthetic horror and inspired many indie surreal games. A fan-made PC remake, LSD Revamped, brought renewed interest into 2010s. I love this game so much, and I cannot tell you why. I think it's just the fact that there's just this like weirdness to it, to the fact it's just dream journal entries practically. And I made sure this was in the Iceberg because I wanted to cover this game, because I was watching Wendigoon's disturbing movie, like video game Iceberg and stuff, and he talked about LSD and Dream Emulator, and it makes me just laugh thinking that some kid really was like, wow, Mom, thanks for finally getting me a new game. And they could have been playing Tony Hawk or Crash Bandicoot, but instead they're left with this horrific thing. And I'll make sure I put an image post-editing of like one of the things you can see, because this game is awesome. And if you have a PlayStation 1 or you want to do some other means of playing it, either the PC remake or otherwise, please play this. You'll be doing yourself the biggest justice known to man. And apparently Tier 4 just has a bunch of my favorites, and which is next, Harvester, which is a point-and-click FMV horror game that throws players into the twisted town of Harvest, a surreal parody of the 1950s America dripping with gore, satire, and social commentary. You play as Steve, a teenager with amnesia forced to join a violent cult called The Lodge to uncover the truth behind its reality. The game uses real actors for cutscenes, giving an uncanny, deeply unsettling tone. Harvester is infamous for its grotesque violence, incest references, and subversive themes, which led to bans and moral panic. Critics panned it at launch for being overly offensive, but is now praised for its bold storytelling and unique approach. The game explores controversial subjects like media violence, nuclear family dysfunction, and government control. It's now a cult classic and available digitally thanks to Night Dive Studios. This, like LSD Dream Emulator, is a great game. I remember finding it when I was much younger and still getting into PC gaming, so probably about 10 years ago. And I found this from, and I don't want to quote it was Tat's Top Videos, but I think it was, that I saw one of the FMVs for the first time, and it absolutely terrified me, and I had to play it. I think I got about halfway through the game. I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to point-and-click point-and-click games in general. I still have never done, like, Monkey Island and stuff like that. But this game is really good, especially if you want something... If you like campy horror games, play this. Like, it really does fulfill a niche in, I think, a genre that a lot of people don't really get anymore. And I think it's only like $10. Plus, Night Dive did the remake for it. And, like, Night Dive did the remake for the Thing game that I covered in the last tier. So, just support Night Dive. It's not sponsored by Night Dive, but, like, support Night Dive. They're giving us good games again. Devilman is a PlayStation horror action game that adapts Go Nagai's classic manga Devilman, following a teenager who merges with a demon to fight monstrous threats. The game features a mix of beat-em-up gameplay and horror cutscenes, staying true to the manga's violent and tragic tone. Unlike many anime tie-ins of the era, it leans heavily into psychological horror and body horror. Released only in Japan, it remains a collector's item due to its limited production and niche appeal. The graphics are dated, but fans appreciate its faithfulness to the dark source material. Some of the in-game imagery directly replicates panels from the manga itself, enhancing its cult value. It remains a notable example of an anime-based game that went full horror instead of action-focused. D and its sequel D2 are experimental horror games developed by the late Kenji Eno. Known for his unconventional game design and storytelling, D is a horror puzzle game that unfolds in real time with no pause or save feature, and tells a vampire-themed story through atmospheric exploration. D2, its Dreamcast follow-up, shifted towards a survival horror shooter set in snowy wilderness with freakish mutant enemies. Both games were notable for their haunting FMV cutscenes and abstract psychological themes. D sold over 1 million copies and made Eno a celebrity in Japan's gaming scene. D2 was controversial for its depiction of spiritual rebirth and surrealist horror elements, but Kenji Eno internationally shipped fewer copies of D than demand required to make it feel rare, an early example of manufactured scarcity. The Curse Eye of Isis is a game set in 19th century museum and is a third-person survival horror game that tasks players with battling a supernatural curse unleashed by a stolen Egyptian artifact. You play as a young aristocrat and archaeologist fighting possessed statues, animated mummies, and other cursed relics. The game uses fixed camera angles reminiscent of Resident Evil, though its visuals are considered dated even for the time. While the story draws heavily on pulp horror and Indiana Jones tropes, the gameplay was often criticized for sluggish controls and awkward combat. It was released on PC, PS2, and Xbox, though sales were modest. The use of Egyptian mythology gives it a unique flair within horror games. It's often remembered as a low-budget but ambitious attempt at blending museum lore and ancient curses. Bad Mojo is a Kafkaesque point-and-click horror adventure where you play as a man transformed into a cockroach after handling a mysterious amulet. Inspired by The Metamorphosis, the game has you navigating a grotesque, realistic apartment full of filth, decay, and danger. The FMV storytelling adds to the game's surreal tone, with real live-action cutscenes portraying your crumbling humanity. Every environment was filled using macro photography of real objects like dead insects, food waste, and rusty pipes, giving it uniquely disgusting texture. Despite its short length, Bad Mojo gained critical acclaim for its bold concept and symbolic depth. It explores themes of guilt, transformation, and the fragility of human identity. A Redux version was released in 2004 with updated visuals and behind-the-scene extras. So now, after all those cool games I just covered, I have to cover one I don't ever want to see again. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is an NES side-scroller that is infamous for its cryptic gameplay, confusing mechanics, and unplayable design. You alternate between Dr. Jekyll and his monstrous alter ego Mr. Hyde, based on stress and damage received from the environment. The game punishes players with invisible hazards, nonsensical objectives, and almost no guidance on what to do. It has become a meme in gaming circles, especially after being heavily criticized by YouTube reviewers. Despite its flaws, it's one of the earliest attempts to adapt Gothic literature into a video game. The Hyde segments shipped gameplay into a bizarre shooter mode that feels completely disconnected. While widely regarded as one of the worst NES games made, it has undeniable retro horror charm in its weirdness. I don't like this game. no notes. I hate this game. Carrier was developed by Jalco for the Dreamcast, and it's a survival horror game set aboard a massive aircraft carrier infested with a mysterious mutagen. The story revolves around bioterrorism, grotesque mutations, and the player's struggle to contain the outbreak while uncovering the truth behind it. It was one of the first horror games on Dreamcast to utilize full 3D environments instead of pre-rendered backgrounds. The game featured a unique limb targeting system that let players blow off enemy arms and legs, influencing combat strategy. Critics found it derivative of Resident Evil, but its naval setting in real-time 3D earned it a small cult following. It also supported the Dreamcast visual memory unit, displaying character health. A sequel was planned, but cancelled after the developer dissolved. Just a quick side note as I'm editing this video, there's a lot of point-and-click adventure games on this, and I did not realize how many there really were. Waxworks was a PC point-and-click horror dungeon crawler that sends players into time-traveling wax exhibits themed after classic horror tropes: zombies, vampires, Jack the Ripper, and mummies. Developed by Horrorsoft, which was later known as AdventureSoft, it mixes RPG combat, puzzles, and extreme gore for its time. The player's goal is to lift a family curse by surviving these twisted dioramas and defeating their evil incarnations. The first-person grid-based movement and combat system created a claustrophobic, methodical pace. The game was known for its brutal death animations, which shocked players back in the early 90s. Despite low production value, it gained a dedicated fanbase and was re-released by GOG.com years later. The original team later went on to create the Simon the Sorcerer series. Gregory Horror Show is based on the cult Japanese anime of the same name, and it's a PS2 horror game that places you in a surreal hotel run by a psychotic mouse named Gregory. Developed by Capcom, the game plays like a stealth puzzle hybrid where you must steal guest souls while avoiding being caught and punished. Each guest represents a symbolic fear or obsession, like addiction or paranoia, and the game's psychological horror lies in its themes rather than gore. The visual style uses sharp cell shading and blocky characters that are unsettling despite being cartoonish. The game was only released in Japan and Europe, becoming a rare gem for collectors. Fans appreciated its eerie blend of humor and dread, with comparisons to Clock Tower in terms of evasion-based gameplay. It's often remembered as one of the strangest yet smartest horror games Capcom ever produced. The Seventh Guest is a landmark FMV puzzle horror game for the PC and CDI. The Seventh Guest puts players in a haunted mansion solving riddles and uncovering the story of a mad toy maker named Henry Stoff. It was among the first games to fully utilize CD-ROM technology, featuring digitized actors, live-action scenes, and pre-rendered environments. Puzzles ranged from logic teasers to bizarre minigames, and the spooky soundtrack became iconic in its own right. It sold over 2 million copies and helped push the adoption of CD drives for home computers. Bill Gates reportedly called it the new standard in interactive entertainment at the time. A sequel, The 11th Hour, followed in 1995 but couldn't reach the same acclaim. Fans are still working on a fan-made spiritual successor called The 13th Doll. Glass Rose is a murder mystery horror adventure developed by Sing and published by Capcom. The game follows a modern journalist who time travels to 1920s Japan and must solve a series of brutal murders in a mansion. It uses a unique word-based dialogue system where players must infer keywords to unlock new information during interrogations. The game's atmosphere is quiet and tense, relying more on dread and historical accuracy than jump scares. It was released only in Japan and Europe, making it hard to find import for horror fans. Japanese actor Mashiro Matsuoka starred as the protagonist, giving it star power domestically. Despite its niche appeal, it's highly respected for its clever storytelling and period-accurate horror. I'm telling you, on this, tier of the iceberg, it's just banger after banger after banger, and I'm so happy I get to cover some of these, because I don't have anyone to talk about, so I get to talk to random people on the internet about how much I love certain games. Designed by Roberta Williams, Phantasmagoria is an FMV horror adventure game that pushed boundaries of the explicit violence, psychological terror, and full-motion video storytelling. You play as Adrienne, a writer who moves into a haunted mansion with her husband, only for things to spiral into demonic possession and gore. The game featured real actors and elaborate sets filmed on a green screen, then overlaid onto digital environments. It was one of the most expensive games of its time, with a budget of over $4.5 million. Controversial scenes, including sexual assault and brutal deaths, led to bans in Australia and high age ratings worldwide. Despite criticism, it was a commercial success and sold over 1 million copies. A sequel, Phantasmagoria, A Puzzle of Flesh, leaned even further into adult themes, but was less successful. I remember seeing Phantasmagoria for the first time, and it blew my mind how in 95 they were able to have the FMV gore of a horror movie overlaid into a video game, and it still blows my mind, because if I don't want you to have to go look for them, I can't put them in the video, because I know I put the art and everything, but I can't show half the deaths in this game, or else I will be put in YouTube ban jail for a while. So if viewer discretion is highly advised looking into it, but it is amazingly talented what they did at the time with this game. another bang. I love this tier. Can I just stay on this tier so I don't have to go look at more at the bottom, because it gets worse, and it's only better now. Nightmare Creatures is set in 19th century London, and is a third-person hack-and-slash horror game featuring gothic monsters, alchemy, and plague-ridden streets. Players control either Iguantis or Nadia as they battle demonic entities released by a secret cult. The game was praised for its dark atmosphere, fast-paced combat, and combo system that was rare for horror games at the time. It was released on the PS1, N64, and PC, and later ported to mobile. And fun fact, it was originally titled Project Frankenstein, underwent a major rebranding before launch. It sold over 1.5 million copies and spawned a sequel in 2000. A third game was teased for Xbox, but ultimately cancelled after the studio went bankrupt. If I do remember correctly about Nightmare Creatures, most of it inspired Bloodborne. And little known fact about me, I love Bloodborne. My buddy, Tom X Games, does not like Bloodborne as much as me, and if he watches this, it's going to be on the podcast, because it's a really funny story what happened to his copy of Bloodborne, and that poor person he was with that had to watch what happened. Good luck on me trying to pronounce this next title. I'm going to try my best. Onichimbara is a hack-and-slash horror action game where you play as a bikini-clad cowgirl with a katana slicing through hordes of zombies. Despite the fan service-heavy presentation, the game features surprisingly fluid combat and combo systems. It was developed by Tamsoft and began as part of D3 Publishers' Simple 2000 budget game line in Japan. The series became infamous for its over-the-top violence and absurd juxtaposition of horror and exploitation cinema. The protagonist, Aya, often fights her zombie-possessed sister, which adds a touch of tragic narrative under all the chaos. Later entries received global releases and even got movie adaptations. While critics were harsh, the series gained a loyal fanbase for its so-bad-it's-good charm. I think I remember playing this game once, and I sat there, watched a chick wearing a cowboy hat, and I was like, you know what, this is the game for me. Michigan Report from Hell is a bizarre horror game that puts you in the shoes of a cameraman, not the hero, as you document horrific effects in Chicago after a fog-based plague transforms people into monsters. Developed by Suda51's Grasshopper manufacturer, the game emphasizes moral choices. Do you help survivors, or film their deaths for sensational ratings? The gameplay is unique. You don't fight, but rather record the horror through first-person cinematography. Dialogue choices and what you choose to film affect your relationships with team members and the ending. Despite being only released in Japan and Europe, it became a cult hit for its experimental narrative and uncomfortable social commentary. It was one of the earliest games to question media ethics in a horror setting. Another fun fact, Suda51 originally pitched it as a satire of tabloid journalism and voyeuristic horror. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is based on Harlan Ellison's bleak sci-fi short story. This point-and-click game traps 5 survivors in a post-apocalyptic nightmare orchestrated by a sadistic AI named Am. Each character is forced to relive their personal traumas in twisted scenarios designed to test their morality and sanity. The game deals with deeply disturbing themes: genocide, grope, mental illness, and guilt. Harlan Ellison co-wrote the script and voiced Am himself, delivering one of the most chilling performances in gaming. Though hard to stomach, the game is praised for its mature narrative and philosophical weight. Multiple endings depend on the player's ability to show compassion or resist temptation. It was controversial, but ahead of its time, and is now considered a masterpiece of interactive fiction. And if I do remember another fun fact, I'm trying to, commentary more instead of just sound like I'm reading off a high school essay, which it basically is as I look at my 29,000 character script. Ellison is like an absolute, jackhole, if I remember correctly, and is, clowned on in the writing community, and I just wanted to put that in somewhere. It doesn't pertain to the game. He's just a jackhole. Countdown Vampires is a Resident Evil clone with a vampire twist. Countdown Vampires follows a bodyguard named Keith as he tries to escape a casino filled with bloodthirsty infected patrons. The game borrows heavily from Capcom's survival horror formula, including tank controls, limited ammo, and pre-rendered backgrounds. What sets it apart is the tranquilizer gun that lets you save enemies instead of killing them, adding moral decisions to the gameplay. It was developed by K2, a studio formed by ex-Resident Evil staff, and published by Bandai. Critics panned the voice acting and dated mechanics, but the game gained cult appeal for its campy tone. A Japan-only sequel, Countdown Vampires 2, was in the works but was never released. It's now considered a forgotten oddity with a strangely ambitious moral compass. Overblood is often cited as the first fully 3D survival horror game on the PlayStation. Overblood predates Resident Evil by several months in Japan. You play as Raz Carsey, who wakes up from a cryogenic sleep in a lab and must uncover a conspiracy involving bioweapons and memory erasure. The game mixes puzzle solving, exploration, and a bizarre amount of platforming for a horror title. Though the controls are clunky, it lets players switch between characters and even a tiny robot companion. It's remembered for its awkward translation, stiff acting, and tone-deaf dialogue, but has become beloved in retro horror circles. The sequel, Overblood 2, attempted open-world design but was more poorly received. Fun fact, a key plot twist was cut from the Western release due to time constraints, which just shows we didn't deserve it. And lastly, for Tier 4, we have Deep Fear, which is an underwater survival horror game set in a submerged naval facility after an alien virus breaks out. You play as John Mayer, an ex-Navy SEAL who battles infected crew members while managing oxygen levels in the facility. The game mixes traditional Resident Evil style gameplay with unique mechanics like limited air supply in each room. Developed by Sega AM7, it was Saturn's final first-party title in Europe. The English voice acting is famously awful, but it only adds to its B-movie charm. Deep Fear never saw a US release and remains one of the rarest Saturn horror games. Despite limited distribution, it's now considered a hidden gem and one of Sega's most underrated horror titles. And with that, Tier 4 of the horror game Iceberg is finished. That one was fun. I loved a lot of those. It's funny because as we were getting down more in the Iceberg, it looks like the games kind of even out. Because, I mean, other ones I talked about, I mean, some of them seemed cool, but they weren't, like, striking my attention as I was researching. But half of these games seem awesome, or I've played them, or I already had something fun about them, all that kind of stuff. But that was a good one. I'm really looking forward to recording the rest and getting part 5 and 6 finished, and I'm just really excited for everyone to, watch it and all that stuff. And like I said at the beginning of the video, part 2 had just hit 100 views. Right now, part 1's almost at 100 views, and this is me future recording because I recorded this about a week ago. I've been busy with work and everything, but part 2 is sitting at 131 views right now, and that is just so cool to me that so many people have watched the video, and there's been more likes on it. I've gained about 19 subscribers, and I'm over the moon and thankful that people are watching what I'm making. I didn't think that I'd get anything when I started, doing stuff. I didn't want to be, the whole point was just for me to have fun, and I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and it's nice getting recognition from like friends and people that are watching the video that find it. It fills my heart with like such glee. And I just really wanted to say thank you to everyone that watched, is continuing watching and supporting me. It really does mean the world to me. I'm genuinely thankful. And I'm going to try and get more out as much as I can. With work, it's hard, but I'm hoping that I can get it done. And I think that's all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!